And this is where I start. This is where changes in the film from the book start not sitting well with me. If we're gonna take that move over to this other side, because this is where
Sure.
I
Yeah.
feel like that part of Paul's character is not developed in the new movie.
Mm.
We don't really see him change.
No.
He's kind of a
No.
through line throughout, and that's a dramatic change to his character that isn't in the film.
Yeah.
It's almost
Yeah.
as though the film doesn't care about that. And the spiritual oracular aspect of him as a heroic character is pretty well central both to his power and to his ultimate tragedy, and
Mm.
it feels singularly undeveloped, which is
Yeah.
why he's almost like he's pretty morose at the start of the film and he's pretty morose at the end, and he doesn't really shift, and I
Right.
found that
Yeah.
a weakness. The other there's another big character shift that I feel like we've been avoiding talking about up until this point.
Specifically discussing.
What?
I don't know about avoiding. I just think it's a very obvious shift that we would get to in time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, like, let's talk about Chani. We need to talk about
yeah.
Chani because movie Chani is not book Chani,
Nope.
and there's a lot of reasons you could do this, but they did it in this film to such a degree that I found it very discordant and odd. There, watching this film was a wonderful experience. I was glad I walked into the theater, but when I was walking out of the theater, I felt this inescapable sense of disappointment because of the emotional note the film chose to end on. The kind of character digression that the film chose to end on that seemed to wildly diverge to the point where it's like, this is no longer the story as written. This can't be, if they do a part 3, this can't be the story as written.
Right.
It's going to be
And-
something else.
So please refresh me. What was the name of the Fremen that Paul had to kill towards the end of 1?
Jamis.
They took his Jamis. All right.
Yeah,
So if I recall properly in the book, Paul inherits Jamis's wife as part of him having. All right. And I think that not happening leads to further with the development things with Chani, because, in the book and even in the Lynch movie, like, Paul talks to Chani and like, look, like, this is what has to happen with the, Empress. And she's like, yeah, no, I totally get that. What has to happen with the Emperor's daughter. You go do that thing. I understand that this is political, but what we have is love, blah, blah, blah. And in this one, it's just like, he don't talk to her about it, and he knows what he got to do, A. And B, she's like, yeah. I'm like, like, okay, you're a Fremen. First off, Fremens having multiple wives is not unknown in your culture, or at least in the book culture, A. So, and B, like, you're too badass and pragmatic of a character for it to be be getting all butthurt about this.
Well, it's beyond that. Chani is they do this weird thing with the Fremen in this film where there are suddenly, stupid redneck southern religious Fremen and then smart northern nationalist Fremen, which is that's not a distinction that exists in the novel. Fremen are Fremen. I mean,
yeah, there's no southern Fremen and northern Fremen. Oh yeah, well,
southern Fremen.
They're down in Hermer drinking that shot. I'm like, oh,
it's no wonder we didn't get dueling banjos. You know what I mean? And Stilgar's one of those southern Fremen, and there's this hostility amongst the good kind of Fremen and the bad kind of Fremen, which doesn't exist in the novel and feels really forced. And Chani's one of the northern nationalist kind of Fremen, and so she's, throughout the movie, as a continuous motif, she's deeply hostile to the whole Muad'Dib religious messianic thing, as lots of Fremen seem to be, which is and this is the change that they made to the character and the change they made the film that I couldn't wrap my head around. What was the purpose of making this change? Because it leads to Chani walking away from Thing, about to get a sandworm with just like rage on her face, which is obviously not the way the book ends. I see Mike with his hand up, so lay it on me,
Right.
brother.
So I think this ties in more with the focus being put onto the political angle. And I think there was much more of a focus by the filmmaker to essentially say, like, hey, look, the Quasar Haderach, the Muad'Dib, the concept of the Mahdi, this is propaganda. We have manufactured it. The Bene Gesserit, like, oh yeah, it's prophecy because the Bene Gesserits have been working on it for thousands of years. So like, oh yeah, we've been working on it, but it's also like, it's not for nothing. We have political ends that we're trying to achieve by creating this person. So I think, to me, the reason they bothered having like factions within the Fremen was to essentially showcase that this was propaganda. They wanted to sort of show people, show the audience, like, this is how this idea is sort of taken and propagated and dispersed throughout the population, and then you see different people respond to it in different ways and how it plugs in with just the regular Fremen culture. So I think, like, that's my take on it. I don't know if
I mean, I feel that you're probably right, but it's a terribly heavy-handed way to do it, especially when they pretty much outright state, "Oh yeah, this is totally." I mean, Paul himself says, "Oh yeah, it's completely Bene Gesserit, friggin'
my mother was
propaganda."
trained to do that. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
he
what.
literally says that, and he does it for political
said-
purposes, so the Northern Fremen will take him seriously as an honest man. Like, he's being a politician at that moment.
But again, yeah,
he's doing the equivalent of putting on the cowboy hat and going pulling with his deer hunting rifle. I'm just like
exactly. And the honest truth being is that there wasn't so much in the book, if I recall properly, whether they believed that Muad'Dib was Muad'Dib or not was an individual Fremen thing, not I came from the north or south of Arrakis kind of thing. It was just kind of like, yeah,
no.
There was no, oh, well, the northern, northern Fremen be walking like this, but the southern Fremen, they be walking like this. I'm like,
and it was a case of, the Fremen ended up following Paul because they saw what he could do.
yeah.
They saw that he knew how to fight.
Because he had 4 years to do it.
He knew how to fight months. And people were like, wow, that guy knows this guy knows what he's doing. Maybe he is the guy. Maybe he's the guy. And there's not really any tension about it. It's just like, he's doing the thing that we wanted him to do. Maybe he's the guy.
Yeah.
And the thing that happens in later novels, in Dune Messiah, and especially Children of Dune, is after the victory, which is the thing that we always is always relevant to Dune. After the victory, after the Messiah has risen, and after the hero has become the tyrant, that's when the Fremen are like, shit, man, did we get played? Right. And it's in Dune Messiah that Fremen are like, shit, did we get played? And it's in Children of Dune that they're actually like renegade Fremen are like, dude, we got played. But that's not in the first novel. No. And so that's why it's okay. So you don't need to subvert Dune because Dune subverts itself. Dune, that whole hero Messiah arc is subverted in the later novels, intentionally and with awareness. Like, that's already in the novels as written. And the thing that makes Paul Atreides interesting is his own confrontation of his own. He's an unwilling tyrant.
Right.
He was put into this role. He didn't want to do it. He didn't really feel like he has a choice. And once it's done, he hates it. And he wants to find a way out. He wants to find a way out of it, and he eventually does find a way out of it. But the problem is that the way out doesn't exist for him. We can talk about, the whole Voice of the Outer World is religious propaganda. The Voice of the Outer World is absolutely Bene Gesserit religious propaganda, and the novel says so. But the Kwisatz Haderach is not just religious propaganda. Like, Paul literally is an oracle who can see the future.
Right.
Like, those abilities are not unreal. It's not a lie. They made it.
Right.
He's a human atom bomb.
Right.
They made it. He is that thing. And the new movie doesn't seem to want to have anything to do with recognizing that. It leaves that on the floor. And like I said, Paul's the same throughout.
It's because they dropped the time skip.
Not only did they drop the time skip, they don't really seem interested. The movie doesn't seem interested in Paul's character growth.
No.
It does. They don't seem interested in him at all. In that they're way more focused on, the inner conflict within Chani, because she loves him.
But we're more interested in the character development of his mother.
She loves him and she hates what he's becoming, and so it's like they're setting her up to be the protagonist of the next film. I don't know if they're making a next film. I don't know if they're doing Dune 3.
They are.
I would guess that they are, but I feel like that's what they're setting up.
Villanova has stated outright there will be a third one.
Right, and this is where I have the problem, is because with the way they ended it, with Chani being separated from Paul, Chani effectively being in opposition to Paul, the plot of Dune Messiah as written cannot be done.
No.
Because the plot of Dune Messiah centers on Chani being pregnant with their twins. That can't happen now unless she's already pregnant at this point. And it's just like, so I don't know what they're doing going forward, except setting Chani up as the nationalist Fremen hero, and now Paul is the bad guy. I found myself asking, do I want to watch that?
Right.
And it brings me right back to, why do this? Why do this? And I can't think of a reason. Because you don't need to subvert the heroic archetype in Dune. It's already there.
Yeah.
Already doing. Paul himself tries to subvert his own heroic archetype. He tries to undo what he is, but he can't. And it falls to Leto II to do the weirdest damn thing that's ever been written in a sci-fi novel.
Even weirder than fucking that popcorn bucket.
Weirder than that. Like, literally, he fucks the popcorn bucket and becomes the popcorn bucket.
For
4,000 years.
Yeah.
I mean, really,
I am the popcorn bucket.
Really, don't you just think that, like, if you ate a sandwich, you'd enjoy it more if you knew someone hadn't fucked it first?
Right.
And that's the whole arc of at least the first 4 Dune novels is Leto II being like, Dad, you can't fix this. I have to. I will fix this. I will fix this in the weirdest way possible, but I will fix it. I will undo what the Bene Gesserit did to you. I will bite the bullet and become a god. And it will suck. But when I am destroyed, by the time I've done my work, what you are and what I am will no longer be possible. I will fix it.
Oh, I will be a really, really weird fucking creature by then, and not recognizable as human, but, win some, lose some.
Yeah, that's the whole thing of where Children of Dune and God Emperor of Dune go. And all of that is really interesting and complex and balances a lot of... I said that earlier the Harkonnens were almost mustache-twirling villains. And the key word is almost, because Baron Vladimir Harkonnen is monstrous, but insanely smart. Like, insanely smart. Like, he's not Snidely Whiplash. That man knows exactly what he is doing. He is entirely aware of himself and what he is. So he's a wonderful villain. and all the characters in this novel series have, have a voice and have a reasonable thing behind what they're saying. Even the
Mm.
weird, even the villainous are given their place on the stage. And watching this new movie, I feel like, no, they're just really making this like, they're simplifying it. They're reducing it to something that has mass appeal. Here's the dumb redneck Fremen, here's the smart northern Fremen, and here's, they have to make it simple stupid, and it loses a lot of the complexity, which is the thing I like Dune for.
Yeah.
I mean, why adapt something that's complex and nuanced and multi-layered if you're going to remove the things by adapting it that made it work?
So
And the movie still works, don't get me wrong, but
go ahead, Mike.
I think part of the reason they've done it this way, and it is simplified for sure, I think it's because most people don't actually understand. Like people that read the books will labor under the sort of premise that Paul is just is a tragic hero, as opposed to like, no, this is actually how the heroic arc goes wrong, or how it then becomes tyranny.
Yeah.
And that's what it actually is in terms of the exploration. But a lot of people, I don't think, actually understand that when they read it, because it's just not. It's there, but they don't. It doesn't get interpreted as Frank Herbert actually intended.
Yeah, they don't know the things that Herbert's calling out to in mythology, even though he literally says, like, Atreides, they're descended from the house of Atreus in ancient Greece. Like, look to ancient Greece to understand what's happening. Like, Kieran, you were talking about Oedipus just now.
Your destined heroes in ancient Greek myth never end up. I can't think of a single Greek heroic myth where the hero ever actually gets a happily ever or doesn't get hoisted by his own damn petard.
Doesn't happen. And like you said, like, just like Oedipus was given a prophecy and he can't escape it, Paul's given a prophecy, he can't escape it. And at the end of Oedipus Rex, Oedipus like pulls his eyes out and wanders off into the wilderness. And that's exactly what happens to Paul in Dune Messiah. He doesn't pull his eyes out, he loses them to a nuclear attack. But at the end of Dune Messiah, he wanders off into the desert, presumably to die, only to come back later in a different guise.
Yep.
I never made that.
He's got a mustache and a goatee. He's like, oh yeah, I'm not Paul Atreides. I'm Saul from Hades. Yeah, Saul from Hades.
I'm evil Paul.
Yeah.
I am evil.
Wait. Stilgar.
Wait. Remember this one, Mike? I'm evil Michael Knight.
Man, yeah, it was like freaking.
I just white and have a cane and a mustache and goatee. I am evil Michael Knight. Dude, it's David Hasselhoff with a mustache and goatee. No, I'm not. I'm. Yes, damn it. It's just like.
No, that was definitely an '80s trope, man.
Sorry,
I know it goes further back than that, but there were just like so many of those. Like many. Like, oh no, it's the evil clone from Dimension X, and it's like, how can you tell? Oh well, beard, goatee. Yeah,
beard, goatee. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, well, what do the women get? And it's like, usually like
American.
Yeah, better. Yeah, or like better outfits, or like I don't know.
They get sexier outfits and longer hair or something.
Yeah, longer hair.
If it's a blonde, she'll have dark hair. If
there you go. Or
already got dark hair, we'll put color in her hair, make it fuller, make it poofier.
Right.
Something extreme hair. That's how you know.
Split up the outfield a little bit, I guess.
I think of like Bad Janet from what do you call it? Who's like the evil Janet that the demons tried to make on the Good Place.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, and she's just, and they're like, yeah, so we tried to make our own Janet, but it just didn't really. well, just take a look for yourself. And then they show the bad Janet, and she's like, "La, la, 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 la," and they're like, yeah, we just, never mind. Yeah.
Yeah, we won't be looking at that ever again. Just forget you ever saw it. So
The movies make it look so easy, damn it.
So I found myself like walking away from this thing that I enjoyed so much of and feeling this sense of disappointment just due to the story structural changes and the character changes that, but like, what, they can't do this now. And to a certain degree, I'm being a book fan nerd about it, and I'll cop to that straight out. But I'm not the sort of person who's opposed to making changes to the book. Like, you have to do that. And
Yeah,
if you
have to.
You can make a huge choice change, like, Kubrick did with The Shining, and make something that's wildly different and also great.
Yeah.
But there's so many things in this that follows the book so well, and there's this one thing that's sticking out and annoying me. So I find myself comparing it to things that have also disappointed me. And it's like, well, is this like Phantom Menace? No, it's not like Phantom Menace. Phantom Menace was just boring.
It had a Jamaican space frog. I mean,
is this like Napoleon? No, Napoleon was the worst thing ever created by a human.
Didn't see it. Not going to.
Don't.
Is this Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter? No, that's just terrible in general.
It sort of felt like Game of Thrones, where like the first 4 seasons of it were just like, this is amazing, and then the longer it went on, the more, and it just ended with like a big, what the fuck was that? So that's kind of the way I feel about it. And Denis Villeneuve is a good director, and he can make his movies however he wants to make them. And he's a good filmmaker who's adapted his film. But I'm like, where is this story going, and am I going to like it? And I don't know that I am, which is really disappointing for me to have to say. it's
fair,
not a good feeling, but I'm not mad about it.
I mean, it's a fair cop. Like, yes, it is a good film. Is it Dune? Yes, but can it go on further and still be Dune? As by, you can't really adapt Dune Messiah into this very easily.
No. I mean, they
you
could,
can't.
but
not easily.
Where they are now, the relationship between Paul and Chani is the thing that drives Dune Messiah, and we don't have that relationship now. I don't know how they're going to square this circle, and I'm skeptical. Now, it could be that I'm wrong, and it'll be like The Shining, and it'll turn out to be great in its own way, and I'm open to that being the case. That's just where I am right now.
I mean, that's fair.
And when it comes to this series, you kind of have to make choices of, I'm done here.
Yeah.
When I talk about, because there are a lot of Dune books, and really everything after the first 4, I don't care about. Like, even the last 2 books Frank Herbert
wrote. You have to decide when you stop reading.
It's like, what? He didn't know what he wanted to do something, but I think he was out of ideas for like Chapter House and Heretics of Dune. I just couldn't deal with it. And
Your Mama a Doom. Like, Your Mama a Doom? What the hell? How many books does this go into?
And all the prequels they're prequels, and so they do prequel things, and they're not great.
Yeah, and they're apparently all really, really bad. Like apparently his son really tried, but like
and it was Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson, and both of those guys are creative in their own right, but neither of them are Frank Herbert.
No,
and so messing around in Frank Herbert's world is only going to lead to something that doesn't quite fit, that goes under the name but doesn't have the same feeling, which is what happens with a lot of these like things that they reboot and legacy sequels that are made by people who are just made by writers who are just hired to like do this thing, and they have no real connection to the beginning of it. It's why everyone hates new Star Trek now, because like the people who are writing for it, they're not Trekkies. Right, they don't have a complete set of the Next Generation. They don't care. This is a paycheck. Right. So they're just going to fart around with a world that somebody else has created and that a bunch of nerds have really strong emotional attachments to. And then you know, it becomes what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I don't know. Like, I think to really appreciate these two movies, you just have to kind of let them be their own thing, which is hard. Which is hard.
Because it feels like a really faithful adaptation of the Dune novel 90% of the time.
Yeah.
But that one little 10%, it's not even like minor 10% shit is the
No.
problem. Like it was just like some 10% shit about like say the Butler in Jihad or something like, you
Yeah.
know,
This is
like
not
I don't
nitpicking
know.
nerd stuff we're talking about. This
This
is
is
like
like really
you
important
change the
10%.
character into something that is not the character from the novel, and it's a big change, and it
And
does
it's a
work.
main character. It is a
Yeah.
main central character that becomes even more important in the sequel novels. And, it's not like some weird little side retainer in the Atreides that they combined with another little side retainer to make one character that serves two. All right, cool, whatever. I don't give a
Gurney,
single
Idaho.
Right.
give a single tug of a dead dog's dick about that. Okay. But Chani's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really the only big problem that I had. Like, and because of the way that they've zeroed in on her and made her someone different, they took the attention away from Paul, so we didn't get to see him do his phase shift.
I mean,
Right.
So
I've seen people discuss that. Oh, well, they changed Jessica so much. No, they didn't really
not really.
change Jessica. They just focused on her character in a different lens. But like
They made her
Jessica
a
be
little
doing
more
Jessica shit.
insistent. Otherwise, yeah, she's basically the same character. Yeah.
I mean, she's just a little more Benny than Gesserit. I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, she's more Benny Gesserit than necessarily a consort of a duke at this point. But
Sure.
still well within the interpretations of her character and doing shit that, she did. Chani, they're like, okay, she mad about some shit that in the book she wouldn't even like. She's like, nah, cool, I get you. I know
Yeah.
how these things work. You got consorts, you got wives, you got, this is political. I
That's the
dig, I
last line of
understand.
the novel. The last line of the novel is Jessica talking to Chani and saying, "That princess, don't even worry about her. She's going to sit in that palace and she's going to read her books, and my son's never going to touch her. In history, Chani, they're going to call you the wife, just like they're going to call me the wife. History will call us wives." That's the last line of the novel.
Exactly. And that wouldn't have been a bad way to end the movie. I'm not going to lie. That would have worked nicely.
I also have to wonder how much of it is the way that they decided to end the film was, I was kind of like, all right, so like Zendaya is a huge celebrity right now. If they had had somebody with less star power playing Chani, would they have stuck more closely to, I don't know, the way the things
That's a
go in the book?
valid question. I thought the same thing, honestly, Mike.
And
I thought it was like,
there might be
did
something
she
to that,
want her
honestly.
role beat to something else? How much pull does Zendaya have?
Oh, I don't
Who's the
know.
one that
Oh,
it goes
yeah,
to the
but,
question of who made this decision? Was it Villeneuve? Is this what he wanted? Was it
well,
somebody at the studio? Was
a
it
supporting state. Yeah.
who made the
A
call and why?
supporting state. A supporting story to that is also Florence Pugh, who plays the the daughter of the Empress, is also real big right now as well.
Yeah.
Equally as bright a star. And honestly, like the princess, the Emperor's daughter, does not play, outside of the fact that Dune is a retelling of her memoirs. She's not an actor in the story really beyond a certain point.
No, Irulan in this film is
She's
pretty much the way Irulan is in the novel.
Yeah.
Or going forward. Like that felt like Irulan to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. It
I've heard
goes to
people float the idea that maybe Chani's the one that's going to be the heretic Fremen or whatever that's going to be the one that's going to say like, no, we got played. This is
Yeah,
bullshit.
that's what
You
I feel
know,
like they're setting up.
yeah, I think that's probably like, to me, that's what it looks like, the direction they're going to go in for a third film. I
Eh,
mean, that's very different from the books.
Yeah, and
But I mean,
that's a big change,
it's a big change. Yeah.
and I
you can't
it's
see they're
weird. You know, you can say Kubrick made huge changes to The Shining, essentially made it a different story, and made it his own thing that's equally a work of art. And you know,
yes.
we did a whole episode on this, Mike. And you
Yeah,
can
we did.
say, you know, you have to, and it makes me think of Jodorowsky, who wanted to do
Yep.
his Dune, and his Dune was going to be a massive change. Like, so
Yeah.
he deliberately said, like, I'm not going to respect the novel. I'm taking the framework of the novel, and I'm going to make my own story out of it. Like, you know, a big, huge divergence.
Blackjack and hookers.
Yeah, yeah, he's making his own Dune with blackjack and hookers, and that to me would have been like, I almost at that in that final fate fight between Paul and Fade Routha, and when it almost looked like Fade Routha was going to win, it's like, dude, are you going to Jodorowsky us? Are you going
Oh,
to
yeah.
kill Paul and he will achieve apotheosis? Because that's what Jodorowsky wanted to do. Jodorowsky wanted Fade Routha to win, and then Paul in death becomes more powerful than anyone can possibly imagine. He
Right. Right.
becomes the god planet, and the universe is transformed. That's Jodorowsky's Dune, which is a change way more massive than anything we're talking about. That's effectively a
Yeah.
different story. And I think if
Yeah.
you do that, it's so different that it's not even worth bothering pointing out the differences. Like, it's
Yeah.
different.
Right. Right. Right.
I think there's what you might call the uncanny valley of book adaptation. What we have here is if you follow a book closely, it looks right. If you digress from it entirely, it looks right. But if you follow it closely but make small changes, you get the uncanny valley effect of like when something looks almost perfectly human, but you can see little tells that it's not, which you don't get when you get massively like characterized, like cartoonish things. You know,
Sure. Sure.
it's when you hit that uncanny valley when it's almost there but not quite, and those little things twig you more. And I think that's what this adaptation is because it's almost close but not quite right in some very key ways.
Hmm.
Whereas if it had been a massive departure, this would be a very different conversation.
Yeah. No, I think so. Um, yeah. I mean, I'm curious to see how much of this. I mean, walking out of part two, I really felt like, um, it was definitely like the second film in a trilogy.
Yeah.
And
Very Empire. Very
yeah,
Empire Strikes Back.
yeah, it's very Empire Strikes Back. I feel like it's been compared to the Empire Strikes Back, and I don't feel like that's an undeserved comparison, to be honest. Um,
True.
but I think, one of the things that did kind of bother me a little bit was that it did feel so much like the second film in a trilogy, which
Yeah.
basically means that it doesn't really stand on its own so much.
Yeah.
And you definitely, it's hard to come out of, Dune Part 2 and not feel like, the director is trying to set up for a third film. And, he had always said that he wanted to do three.
Yeah.
So, it, I liked it, but yeah, when you're coming out of the film, when you're done watching it, you're like,
Hey,
yeah,
wait a
they're gonna do
minute.
another one. They're gonna do another one. And it's and I think we'll see. If they do a third one, which I mean, I don't think it's been greenlit yet, but it looks pretty likely considering how well both films did at the box office. We'll see how much of the setup actually pays off and what we end up getting. And to sort of piggyback on what we've been saying here, where the little incremental changes are sort of making us feel like maybe this is not quite right. I kind of feel like if they do a third film and they go in a radically different direction, well, then it would be fine, because they've sort of given themselves the ramp for that. But yeah, that is one thing I can say that that I didn't necessarily care for walking out of the movie, was just feeling like I was like, okay, so that's part 2 of 3. That's the second film in a trilogy.
Yeah, definitely the second film in a trilogy. It's like I feel like that was just setup 101. And
look, Paul's in the carbonite, and Stilgar's lost his hand, and I don't know that the analogy's falling apart pretty fucking quick. Look, man, castles made of sand, fall to the sea eventually. Right?
Yeah, I got you, man. I got you. So it's kind of a weird note, because normally we talk about Dune and we're jumping up and down for joy about it, and now it's like, well, we like these things and we didn't like these others.
Yeah, but again,
or maybe that's
look, we're old petty nitpickers, okay? we all were English majors of some form and frond, and as such, being nitpicky petty bastards just kind of comes with it.
Yeah. It's
like, you really haven't heard Beowulf till you've heard it in the old English, like
Ingard Yemen
Heard bork. Great, wonderful.
No, it's just
I literally had a lit professor that said that you haven't heard Beowulf till you've heard it in the original old English, and I'm like,
that's what it was written in.
God, what have I done to myself with this major?
You've edified yourself. That's what you've done.
I'm going to become a pedantic prick, aren't I?
And
you're on the right podcast.
Yes, we're on the right podcast for that sort of thing. So we are being pedantic tonight, but we're not necessarily being shallow.
No, we're in fact being deep and pedantic.
Deep and pedantic.
Or deeply pedantic.
What did you say, Mike? I didn't catch.
I just went dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. Okay, all right. So
how deep does the rabbit hole go? I don't know, man. How deep does that popcorn bucket go? I mean,
I was waiting.
No end.
How did I not see that coming?
How did the popcorn bucket not see that coming?
Because it doesn't have any fucking eyes.
You have to shovel your steps so you don't attract the popcorn bucket.
Hey kids, did you even wonder what it's like to fuck the Sarlacc pit? Well, now you can.
That's another thing. Like, did Lucas just like rip off a sandworm and just stick a sandworm in a pit and call that his Sarlacc pit? Is that what he did? It seems like that's what he did.
Yeah.
I think he had a really weird vagina dentata nightmare, and that just went from there.
He was going through a divorce at the time.
Yeah, there's that.
He was going through a divorce at the time that they were making Return of the Jedi, or he was already
the toothed sandy space vagina. Gotcha.
Yeah, we're not the first ones to point that out. That's kind of
no.
No, we're just the funniest ones to point out.
Like Temple of Doom, which is why that movie's so dark.
Yeah.
So, well, I think we've run out of things to say about this popcorn bucket.
I mean, we probably ran out of things too that we should say about this. Like, I could probably run this podcast for another half hour on the sand bucket, on the popcorn bucket sandworm fleshlight angle, but I feel at that point, well, it will have truly have gotten away from me.
You don't want to let the popcorn bucket get away from you.
Never go full popcorn bucket.
Never go full popcorn bucket. Never go full popcorn bucket.
Never go full popcorn bucket.
So, I think the time has come to put the pin into Dune, and wait with bated breath to see what they decide to do next time, and if the cynics or the hopeful are correct, if the smart nationalist Fremen or the dumb religious Fremen come out on top. How do we feel about that?
Yeah.
Well, you got a pretty sandworm. You look just like an old man of the desert. Why don't you just drop them pants?
Show me that popcorn bucket.
A joint production from John Borman and Dennis Villeneuve.
Oh boy. All right, this has been the popcorn bucket episode of Shallow and Pedantic, and I'm gonna call it that. That's just what's happening. It's the popcorn bucket episode of Shallow and Pedantic. We're back. We're bad. Check us out on patreon.com/Shallow and Pedantic, on gumroad.com/Shallow and Pedantic, and news found on Facebook and contentblues.com. Thank you so very much for stopping